Hey, good evening, everybody. What's up? Welcome back to another edition here of the Football Guys Daily Fantasy Hour, all presented to you by RotoGrinders.com. You should know us by now. I am Dan Bach alongside the Lee twins. We've got Austin. We've got John. They are of the Football Guys. I am Dan Bach of the RotoGrinders. And we're here to talk you through this Week 8. It's a weird-looking week. John, I don't know. We talk a lot about the week itself, but man, this one is like I actually feel zero passion towards this week of daily fantasy football. I'm going to go out and say it. I'm not feeling the passion this week. Maybe I'll get it after tonight, but I'm not feeling it right now.
My first pass is very similar, Dan. I'll be honest with you. I actually didn't think of it in the way that you did. Maybe I'm not so pessimistic. Maybe I'm a glass half full type of guy, but I will say that I'm not overly excited about the way this slate is looking. There are six teams on bye. We got a London game in the morning that we can't really play. We got a Thursday game. We got a Sunday night game on DraftKings we can't play. And of course we have the Monday night game. So it really limits with regards to playing on DraftKings. I think we're down to 9. FanDuel, hey, we get that extra game on Sunday night. But this week, it's really not even that attractive of a game from a fantasy perspective. I think a real football fan would love that game. I'm kind of with you, especially coming off of last week, because I thought last week was a really interesting slate for any number of reasons. But we can't just take the week off if we don't like it, right?
No, we can't. That's unfortunately not the way it works. Austin, he is welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm excited about Halloween coming up, less than a week away. So, if you don't like the DFS slate, you've always got a bunch of candy to eat.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like we're getting robbed here, because if there's any show on our platform, and we got a gazillion of them, that would clearly do something Halloween themed, it would be this one. But here's the problem. It's we're a day too late. We can't do Halloween yet. It's way too early for it, but we can't do it on next week's show because it's the day after Halloween. So I feel like we're totally getting screwed out of having a fun, dressed up Halloween type show. That's all I'm saying.
I could wear a goofy wig the whole show if that would make you feel better. It feels like you need a bit of a pick-me-up, Dan. I could just wear a weird wig the whole time.
I don't know what it is. You're right. It's like curmudgeon for me today.
Give me a second. Let me get something here.
Okay. Well, and and the good news is, though, of course, that, not Austin. Yeah. There we go. There we go. Where was that?
Now? You feeling it now?
Where was that for the Bohemian Rhapsody 2 years ago?
Yeah, here's the thing. I ordered it 2 years ago, and it just came in the mail yesterday. It got lost somewhere.
Well, that's good karma for me, because that means that next week you're going to take the stroll down loser's lane. Before we get to John's performance this week, let's quickly tell you about what we got going on at Football Guys and RotoGrinders. I'll start at RG. If you haven't checked out our Results DB, this is really a fun tool that we've got that actually gets started immediately once games lock. And basically what we do is we take the .csv and we parse everything out. So you can search TipandPick and see what, exposure of players he's got in certain lineups, or you can in certain tournaments. And you can do the same with me. And you can see all the ownership for the field for the games that's locked. And it's pretty cool. You can even search specific combinations. If you want to see how many people have a particular stack, you can put that in there. So check that out. Results DB over at RotoGrinders, free tool for you. And Austin, we're at the near midway point, and you guys decided, we're going to get a little deal to the peeps over at Football Guys.
Yeah. We lowered our price of our DFS package from $45 to $35. So you get all of the site content for the rest of the season for $35. And it includes about 20 articles and a bunch of tools, a bunch of DFS tools each week. And it also includes Dynasty and IDP and all kinds of season-long stuff if you're into that. And I'm just going to see how long I can last with this wig before it annoys you guys so much you asked me to take it off.
I mean, I'm just waiting for you to belt out some, Van Halen, because that's a little Sammy Hagar-ish. Wouldn't you? I think he looks like Sammy Hagar. All right, let's get to. Let's not bury the lead, and that's not week 8 this week for me. It's Losers Lane for our very own Tip and Pick. And John, we've had some blowouts in these Losers Lanes this week. Kind of came down to the end, did it not?
Yes, it came down to the ends. And, I thought that it was actually an interesting week because a lot of times I kind of know who the other person has. And this time we all had some, Austin and I both had 3 or 4 players heading into the last game. Wasn't quite sure. I make that long story short. I just stuck with my guns and played the ones I had because I didn't want to outsmart myself, and pull a damn box, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying. And, it all came down to Jimmy Graham. And Jimmy Graham dropped a touchdown in the end zone that would have been the difference maker for me. Tonight, Austin would have been performing rather than me. But unfortunately, he did not pull through for me. And so that was the impetus, the inspiration for my rendition of Losers Lane this evening.
Well, I love it. You did a spectacular job. Let's let all the people see it. And I'm not talking about the show or about the song, talking about the mustache. John Lee takes a stroll down Loser's Lane.
And you will find me on Loser's Lane.
Cause I'm the week's loser, yes, I'm the real loser. All you other big losers can hail the king.
My lineups were dead for the night.
When you add up all of those inches, it'll be the difference between winning and losing.
This is why this show is like no other in fantasy sports. You don't find that anywhere else.
Downtown of Seattle is known for traffic jams. And if you go down there, you better just beware of a man named Jimmy Graham. Jimmy's a hell of a receiver. You see, he stands about 6'6". Posing defenders call him an overachiever. Hits him like a ton of bricks. And it's good, Jimmy Graham, the goodest tight end this side of town. Gooder than sugar and spice. He got hands like a Jerry Rice. Jimmy scored a touchdown, and I need him to do it again. Cause I'm 3 points short, and I need to avoid humiliation of Loser's Lane. It's 3rd and goal from the Giants 1. Excitement for Jimmy's fans. Russell gave him an end zone look on a button hook, and he let it slip between his hands. And it's bad, Jimmy Graham, worst tight end this side of town. Certainly not the GOAT. Hands like Sammy Coates. Bad, Jimmy Graham, worst tight end this side of town. Certainly not the GOAT. Hands like a Sammy Coates.
Bravo, John. Bravo. Very well done. You might need to go and talk to your prop master a little bit and get a little more stickum for that thing. But here's my question to you. Did you ever have a mustache? Because you're old. You're older than we are. And I have a hunch like at some point in time in your life, there was probably like in the 80s, like mustaches.
I'm not that old.
So did you ever have a mustache?
No. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I haven't. What happens is, actually starting next month, November, I never shave. And so I'll start growing in this. And then I will wait until probably January or something to shave. And I always do something pretty unique. And I walk around the house that way, but I never go in public.
I was going to say our show is over by then, John.
Yeah,
Come on. We need to do it like right around Christmas or something. Give me something. At least send a picture out on social media. That's the least.
All right. Maybe I'll do that. But I'm tickled that you thought I could grow a mustache in the 80s. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
I don't know. I don't know. You might be. All right, let's get to this week 8, and we always start with the injury update. And there are some injuries here. A handful of these are guys who are coming off of buys. Obviously, Carson Palmer with a broken arm. We'll see Drew Stanton have fun with that one. You might want to play teams against the Cardinals on defense moving forward because he stinks. But Jay Cutler, Thursday Night Football, cracked ribs. He is going to be out. Matt Moore, I think he's the better quarterback anyway, Austin. I mean, you're the Miami Dolphins guy here. And, again, this is just kind of part of this slate that just doesn't look overly enjoyable. But Matt Moore's not a guy I feel we want to attack with a team defense or anything.
No, I wouldn't go that far, especially with kind of how much disarray the Ravens are in right now. But as a Miami fan, I was actually kind of sad when they signed Jay Cutler. I was like, let's just go with Matt Moore. It can't, get much worse. And then it did because Jay Cutler was our quarterback for a while. So, he's not going to save the Dolphins this year, but it should be a little bit better.
In that same game, though, Devontae Parker hadn't played the last 2 weeks, John. Questionable again. And Kenny Stills has been excellent. I mean, he's been scoring touchdowns. He's been getting lots of targets. I'm sure we've got a price bump on him this week. But if Parker would be out, do we have any interest in Stills on a week where there's not a lot of value at wide receiver? When we talk about the value wide receivers, you're going to want to throw up a little bit. It's pretty ugly. So Stills at least has performed admirably the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, he's performed against some teams that I wouldn't necessarily consider as being, juggernauts. Last week, I think he had a pair of touchdowns against the Jets. He had 9 targets last week. This week, he goes up against the Baltimore Ravens. They've got the 4th best DVOA pass defense in the league. I think he's going to line up across from Jimmy Smith, who's a pretty good cornerback in his own right. And the Dolphins, they have, a 17 points implied team total this week. It's just not a spot I want to go chase those touchdowns coming off of that big week. So I think if you're going to play this game this week, it's a good week to probably fade. If you're playing the Thursday night slate, I would just pretty much stay away from it unless maybe on FanDuel you want to grab one of those field goal kickers.
Yeah, when in doubt, if you need the sweat, just grab a field goal kicker on Thursday night. I love that recommendation. I think the biggest kind of injury / suspension news we really have this week is Marshawn Lynch. He's going to be out this game, suspended for 1 week. So Jalen Richard, DeAndre Washington, these are the guys who represent some of the greater value we have this week, John, at running back, but they also provide zero clarity on who is going to, be the guy out of these two. How are you approaching it? And do you have a preference between the two?
I really don't have a preference, to be honest, because I mean, the game, if I knew kind of the game script, how it was going to play out, that would be a little bit more informative because, DeAndre Washington kind of is the grinder, the pounder, and Jalen Richard is a guy who catches the ball out of the backfield, kind of the third down back. But it's a pretty close game in terms of the Vegas spread. I think Buffalo's a 3-point favorite, so maybe that pushes you a little bit towards Richard. But I think this game could go either way, and so for that reason, it's really difficult to say. I think this guy's going to get more. I could see this game finishing a 50-50, 60-40 split either way. And again, we're talking about a fairly low implied team total, 21 points. I'm staying away from it because Buffalo's got a pretty good defense. They're number 7th against the rush, and they're allowing 3.56 yards per carry on the ground this season to opposing running backs. It's just not a great spot to take advantage this week, unfortunately, even with the Marshawn Lynch suspension.
And west to east, 1 o'clock start. We always know those are miserable, and for those teams out west. I think they're still GPP viable, Austin, because they're cheap, especially on DraftKings, where you do have some PPR and you do have some tighter salaries. Good luck if you want to pay up at quarterback this week and try and roster Ezekiel Elliott or something. It's awful. It's really, really hard to do. And I'm not, calling out DraftKings for making it too hard on me. I'm just saying, you're going to have to take some chances somewhere. And I think in tournaments, either of these two guys work. I would prefer Richard. What's your take on this? Because I think it's an important one.
Yeah, I prefer Richard as well. And I feel like this is a tight week because I don't think there's a ton of injuries that impact the main slates on these sites, which I like. I like having to make these tough calls. But I would take Richard in this matchup just because I think that Oakland's going to be playing from behind, especially
Okay. What happened? Okay.
weird. My camera's on and I see all of us.
Zoom.
On
everything
RotoGrinders, though, we're not live on RotoGrinders.
We live on.
And so I don't think I could lay it out more clearly. That's pretty much the master plan for winning all the monies this week.
Oh, I'm sorry, everybody. You just missed out on that. Yeah. John, you and me, we're banking all the money.
I was taking good notes, and I might put at least 20% of what Austin said into my article this Saturday.
I like it. I like it. Let's talk about a couple other situations here to look at. And you know what? I just love his name. Maybe because it's Juju on that beat. Yeah, Juju on that beat. Yeah. Have you heard that song, Austin? Have you heard that one? I know John hasn't.
Yeah. No, I love that song.
Yeah, you definitely
Are you making
don't,
that up? Did you really know whatever he's talking about?
Totally. It's a huge hit.
Okay. It's a huge hit. And John's sitting there, swigging whiskey, listening to his country music. Well, we've got Kids Bop, Juju on that beat. Juju Smith-Schuster, this guy's been pretty impressive so far. And now we get the latest where Martavis Bryant, not only is he, talking smack to teammates, now they got him down to the scout team, John. They said, your scout team, he's probably going to be inactive this week. but I am on board with Juju in the leagues and the weeks, in the places we can play him this week because of where that game lands.
Yeah, I mean, I think moving forward, Juju is a guy that we want to be watching. This week, I'm not so sure. He's still coming out of concussion protocol. I don't think he practiced today. Can you guys confirm, either of you?
I think he actually got cleared late in the day. I want to say
Okay.
he has been verified playing this week.
All right. So I mean, I figured he would play. I don't think that the Steelers would have deactivated Martavis Bryant without knowing that they had a legitimate wide receiver 2 against this game against Detroit in Detroit this weekend on Sunday night. But he should see plenty of Quandre Diggs, who, as Dan has pointed out in previous weeks, has been a much better defender against the pass this season than he has been in years past. And on the other side of the ball, Antonio Brown going to see some shadow coverage from Darius Slay. This game in general is a game I think I will be fading for the most part, outside of maybe some exposure to maybe Le'Veon Bell. But I think this is a slow-paced game. You got a rested Detroit team that surely will be fired up at home. It's a prime time game, playing for everything. Juju is going to be in play, but I don't think this is the week we want to get him into our lineups.
Yeah, I think he's still fine, especially on a week where there's not a lot of value. But again, you can't play him on the main slate on DraftKings for certain. That's one place you can't be playing him. All right, let's move on to our chalk talk here, guys. We've got a lot of positions to talk about, and we'll start at the quarterback position, Austin, where Carson Wentz is been incredible. 11 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks. That's going to get everybody's attention. And he's 7,200 on, I believe, DraftKings, 7,900 over on FanDuel. But you look at where he ranks in terms of compared to other quarterbacks, and he's one of the top guys over there on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, he's a little bit lower down that list. Do you think he ends up being the chalk against San Francisco this week?
I think he's definitely the chalk on FanDuel. I think the pricing on FanDuel just points you right to Carson Wentz as your cash play. On DraftKings, I think you've got some more interesting pricing with some better other possibilities. I'm also looking at Cam Newton, Kirk Cousins, who are a little cheaper to try to save some cash there. And it's tricky to go 7,200 with Wentz when you've got Prescott at 7,300 and Brady at 7,600. You don't have to pay a whole lot more to get those two guys.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, John. I'm kind of on board with that line of thinking, where especially the tighter salaries on DraftKings, there are some other cheaper options I think that we'll talk about here in just a minute that I think work for your roster build a little bit better. But if you were going to, if you didn't want to play Wentz on FanDuel, and I think he's a good play, okay? I really do. But also he's a real heavy favorite in this one. Who knows how much he's going to be slinging it there in that second half. Is there any alternative to him on FanDuel? Because I think he's really going to be really chalky over there.
Yeah, he definitely is going to be chalky. Looking at my notes here, I think that there's a couple guys you can look at. I think you can look at Russell Wilson, who's the same price. Wilson 7,900, and he's going up against the Houston Texans. Really strong up front. They will be without J.J. Watt, obviously, but they've been stellar against the rush, but they've been decimated through the air. And we already know what's going on in that backfield there in Seattle. There's not a whole lot to love. So this could be a situation where Russell Wilson he does everything himself. He's scrambling. He can do some things with his legs. He'll be looking towards Doug Baldwin, who has a plus matchup in terms of personnel. I think that he's certainly in play if you want to pivot away from Wentz at that high ownership. And then the other guy is Kirk Cousins. I mean, this game looks to be a shootout. They're going up against Dallas, and Dallas is not necessarily doesn't have a great secondary. And we know that Josh Doxson is what we're seeing right now is Terrell Pryor's usage going down. Josh Doxson is finally getting healthy. They're going to use him the way that they intended when they drafted him 2 years ago. I think this is a good situation for him as well. So I think those three quarterbacks would be guys I'd be looking at. And, we could throw one more in, maybe not for cash games, but Cam Newton at 7,800 is is equally attractive against a Tampa Bay secondary that has just allowed everybody to plow through them this season.
And then over on DraftKings, a big pricing gap here. Andy Dalton on DraftKings looks highly attractive. I mean, he gets the Indianapolis Colts this week, who just made Blake Bortles look, beyond competent, look like a Pro Bowler this past week, threw the ball all around the field. And, Dalton to AJ Green feels like the safest combo we could have, Austin, this week. And on FanDuel, I don't know if I can afford to go there, but on DraftKings, man, at 5,700, that is a monster savings off of those top guys. And I think, what's our projection, like 275, and, put it at 2.5, could get to 3, but probably going to get you 2.
Yeah, exactly. At 5,700, you can't ignore that, especially on a tight week. And so I think you're going to see Dalton in a lot of cash lineups this week on DraftKings, just because that price feels a little too low.
How about running back here, John? Zeke was a monster last week. If you didn't have him, you probably weren't winning a whole lot of money. Just absolutely killed it. Can we go back to the well again? FanDuel, a little bit easier, I think, maybe than DraftKings.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's easier on FanDuel to do it than DraftKings. I think if you're expecting 3 touchdowns again this week, you might be misinformed against Washington, who has been much better against the rush. They're allowing about 3.5 yards per carry to opposing running backs this season. That's a little bit scary, even for Zeke and this Cowboys offensive line. We know that Jason Garrett's going to feed him. We know he's going to get his opportunities. But if I'm paying $9,000 for a running back this week, I'm going to drop down a little bit and look at LaShawn McCoy against the Oakland Raiders, playing at home. He's getting just as much usage as Elliott, and there aren't a whole lot of other personnel on that offense that are going to take looks away from him. And it's a much better matchup at a discount. So that's the way I think I'm going to be building my rosters this weekend.
Yeah, and they struggle in the DVOA department against, I believe, receiving running backs as well. And we know that's where McCoy is certainly going to pick up a chunk of his fantasy points. In the middle tier, we've got Mark Ingram, who's just been fine. And I think he's an option for you, maybe on DraftKings. But that Chicago defense, I think, is pretty good, though. I don't think they're trash. And it's a home game, though. They're big favorites. And the salary, he's playing like an 8K guy, and he's still in the 7K range. So I'll throw him out there. And then on the value side of things, we already talked about the guys from Oakland, but could we trust Joe Mixon at all this week, Austin?
Ooh, Joe Mixon. I feel like the Cincinnati coaching staff is sort of playing games here and continues to sort of split the workload between their 3 running backs, even though the fans sort of see Mixon as the answer at running back. So this is one of those coaching situations that I don't trust, even though the matchup and the price feels like the situation you want to play him in. I'm not a fan of Mixon this week.
John, I think you're not a fan either. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. I'll fill you in a bit more later in the show. However, I'm fairly off of Joe Mixon this week.
But where do we go for cheap running backs then? Where do we go? Because
what about LeGarrette Blount against San Francisco? Against San Francisco,
no.
They've allowed the most normalized fantasy points to any running backs this season. They just ooze running back points.
Let's say this again. No.
All right.
All right. I mean, I can't get behind it. Look at the numbers for him. He is just not a good running back, and
neither is San Francisco's defense.
I get it. I mean, our early ownership projections has him at 17.5% on FanDuel. I hope he's at 17.5% on FanDuel because the guy, he could, I guess, fall into the end zone if they get on the 1 or 2 yard line. He has no skills. He has no skills anymore. Look at the yards per carry for him. He is dreadful. I do not like or trust LeGarrette Blount, even against the worst defense out there. And maybe that's what he's facing this week. But I'm against LeGarrette Blount. I'm going to veto that pick. John, override my veto though, because we got to get your take.
All right, so I will slightly override your pick because I do think it's an excellent matchup for him. And if they jump out to the lead that we think they should win by, I mean, they're 13-point favorites. If they jump out by 15 points early in this game, they've got to feed LeGarrette Blount. That doesn't discount the value. Well, I mean, it doesn't discount the value of Wentz or Aguilar or any of the other players on this team. But maybe there's another person we could talk about here. And you're
let me
probably
just say one more thing real quick, though, is he's not even cheap enough. He's 6,100 on DraftKings, or on FanDuel, excuse me, 51 on DraftKings, where there's no PPR and he's useless in that anyway. But 6,100, that's not even like a gimme price tag. If he's sitting 5K, maybe, but
I think that he's touchdown dependent. I'll grant you that. And the answer to your original question, Dan, is there probably isn't a whole lot of savings to be had at the running back position this week. We could have a similar discussion, and maybe we shouldn't waste time on it, but we could have a similar discussion surrounding Rob Kelly against the Cowboys' 31st ranked DVOA rush defense this week. If Washington wants to keep this game close, they're going to try to control the time of possession against Dallas. And I could see Rob Kelly having a similar type floor as Blount, but for cash games, I don't think we do this. I think we have to spend up on the guys we've already talked about.
All right, let's get to wide receivers because we might have to go dumpster diving here because I don't want LeGarrette Blount in my freaking lineups this week. But on the high end, we've got AJ Green, we've got Julio Jones. I think on DraftKings you can't play both. On FanDuel, you can probably play both, but then you're going to end up with a guy like LeGarrette Blount as one of your running backs because there's no quarterback pay down. If there was a quarterback pay down, I'd be into it, but I'm not seeing one over on FanDuel this week. So we have to have a decision here. Is it clear for you, AJ Green over Julio? I mean, we saw Jones finally get going a little bit, John, this past week, and the Jets, far from, not a terrible defense by any standard, better than we expected, but, not shut down by any measure.
Well, I mean, I think for some of the reasons we've already talked about, I think AJ's the play this week against Indianapolis. I'm looking for the numbers really quick on my sheet here. Indianapolis, the Colts, of course, I can't find it on the fly, but I know that they're allowing one of the highest points per game to wide receivers normalized, and I see Austin shaking his head yes, because I know that he's the guy who kind of builds this tool over there at Footballguys. This is a great spot for AJ. And we already know that there are some questions there in the backfield about Mixon and Hill and Gio and what everything's going to be in terms of the mix-up of running backs. I think he's the play this week. I think that the Falcons can beat the Jets any which way they want. They can go on the run. They can throw through the air. They can throw to Hooper. They can go to any of their auxiliary receivers and Coleman. With the Bengals, I think it's more limited, and AJ's the guy if I'm spending up.
Yeah, I think it's fine in GPPs if you swap them a little bit because we're going to have way higher ownership on AJ Green, and Julio Jones still has monster upside. A couple other wide receivers I'm looking at out there in that game with Philadelphia. I think it depends on where you're playing. Alshon Jeffrey is cheap on FanDuel, probably priced right on DraftKings. And then you got Nelson Aguilar. He's another guy. I mean, can he keep scoring touchdowns? I think it's like 3 or 4 weeks in a row he has one, Austin.
Yeah, he scored 3 weeks in a row. I think the tough question here is I feel like a lot of these Eagles players are appealing because of the matchup and the pricing feels a little light. You're not going to get all these guys into your cash lineup. It's like, which guys are you going to focus on? It sounds like you would focus on the passing game. I think I would go Aguilar on DraftKings, Jeffrey on FanDuel. I think either of these guys could have a solid game here.
And I think on DraftKings, Keenan Allen is a lock and load this week. 7,300. I think that's too cheap against the Patriots. We'll talk about that matchup. And John, you kind of went into this already, but give me the full selling pitch on Josh Doxson as a 3K crapper that I can get behind.
Well, I mean, the Redskins drafted this guy, I think, in the first or second round last year. He got hurt in the preseason, never got on the field. And the word coming out of Washington this week, and maybe it's been coming out for a while, and we've kind of seen it, is that they're not in love with Terrell Pryor and what he's brought to the table since coming over from Cleveland. And I'll admit, I'm kind of surprised by that. I thought he was going to be a better player here in this system, but he just hasn't worked out. And yet they love Doxson. And this week, Coach Gruden has come on and said that we need to get Doxson more involved. He's 100% healthy for the first time since he's been here. And I think that what we're going to see this week is a lot of involvement. Last week, he had 5 targets on limited snaps. He's gone over the past few weeks, 17, 19. And last week, he made his way up to 54 snaps against the Eagles. This week, going up against the Cowboys, I think that he's a guy that we have to be focusing on, especially because, as you pointed out, Dan, he's way too cheap. He's underpriced for the type of upside and floor that he brings to the table on an otherwise kind of tight week.
I have to interrupt here and say that there may be some bias going on. The player's name is Doxson, and he's got 2 Doxson pillows behind him. I think that there's a connection here, and we can't trust this pick.
I like that. Good pickup there, Austin.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still. It's early in the week for me to decide whether I'm going to jump on that. It is such a tight week on DraftKings. I think it's going to, people are going to be begging for low dollar guys, and he's probably going to be a guy I'll probably be under-owned in tournaments just because I don't like high ownership on guys that I don't think are particularly good. I don't think he's particularly a good player. Doesn't mean he doesn't get good opportunity, but I don't want to, I'm fine being under the field on a guy like that. I'm not usually fine being under the field on guys like AJ Green or Julio Jones or Ezekiel Elliott, those guys who are actually good players. Guys like him, I'm willing to usually kind of try and find some pivots elsewhere.
He's going to be a top 8 receiver this week in terms of ownership. So if that's what your gauge is, you're going to be fading him because he will be highly owned by the end of the week.
The question is, where do you go for salary relief here, right? I mean, on DraftKings, are you looking at a guy like Robbie Anderson for 4,200? Are you looking at Paul Richardson for 4,000?
No, we're going to our next position. We're going to our next position, tight end, where we can roster 2 tight ends because I swear
I did last week. Yeah.
And I think the 4K tight ends are better than the 4K wide receivers.
Yep.
I mean, you've got Jordan Reed on DraftKings at 4K in that range. You've got Hunter Henry in that range. We've got Jason Witten in that range. I mean, all these guys are really cheap, and lo and behold, the true 3K crapper, because he is 3K, Tyler Kroft. I know he's had he's the number 1 tight end. 2 out of the last 3 weeks, he's been spectacular. We don't need you to be spectacular at 3K. Against the Indianapolis Colts, anything can work. Austin, there's your path to value.
Yeah, I agree. And that was my cash game lineup last week. Double tight end, and it freed up a lot of cash at the other positions. So I like that call because I don't see a whole lot I like at receiver in the 3,000s and 4,000s. But these tight end matchups look a lot better.
John, which is your favorite one? If you're not like me and you just play one tight end, who would it be this week?
I'm deciding between 2. We'll talk about them later, but I'm leaning towards Jason Witten. Actually, I'm not a big Jason Witten fan traditionally because I think he and I in a foot race would be very, very close. So yards after the catch are pretty much not happening.
I would have made fun of you if I didn't know that you're like this Orange Theory fitness god who is just, pushing pace beyond belief. So I'll actually say you might win that race.
Okay, well, whatever Orange Theory has given me, I don't think it's given me much above what Jason Witten has brings to the table. He's got great hands, and I really do think this matchup is excellent against Washington. Washington is ranked, I'm going to say, about 5th in the league in terms of normalized strength of schedule against the tight end position. And I love the matchup here. I think that he's going to be heavily used in this game. So that's the guy I think I would go for in that range.
The old dad runner. Let's go to defense and special teams here, Austin. Anything stand out to you at this one? What you got?
I like Cincinnati against Indy. And if you've got a little extra cash, Philly against San Francisco. I think Seattle at 3,200 on DraftKings feels a little low. Those are mostly kind of like cash game sort of considerations.
I'm going to throw the Saints out there as well against the Bears at home. I mean, Mitch Trubisky threw the ball 7 times last week. 7. I mean, think about that for a second. And they won the freaking game.
He managed it so well that he didn't need to do more.
And you play to win the game. We know that. But 7 passes. If they fall down early in this game, and they could, and Mitch Trubisky is going to be relied upon to complete passes to that group of receivers, I think it could be a pretty good day for that Saints defense. So another one I want to throw. All right, let's get some game flows here, John. You're the Cowboys fan. Dallas and Washington, you've spoken pretty highly of plays in this game. I'm guessing this is probably one of your favorite target spots if you're looking at game stack.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be this week. Looking through these games, looking at the Vegas odds right now, the next highest total on the week appears to be this New England LA Chargers game at 48.5 points. And that one looks to be a blowout, at least according to Vegas, where New England's a 7-point favorite. So you can envision a scenario there. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you can envision a scenario where New England jumps out to a quick 2-touchdown lead, and maybe they try to sit on it. Whereas this Dallas and Washington game, it should be a slugfest, the traditional NFC East going back and forth, just exchanging blows. I think we got 2 very good offenses here. Washington scored 24 points against the Eagles on Monday Night Football the other night. And we know Dallas is fresh off of that big victory, that 40-point score fest there in San Francisco. This could be a great situation for just back and forth close game. And so I'm definitely going to be targeting players from both sides of these offenses.
I want to talk San Francisco and Philly. We've talked a lot about guys on Philadelphia side of things, but San Francisco is clearly going to probably be trailing in this one. And there was a big injury for Philadelphia on Monday night. Jordan Hicks, the linebacker, they're down, I think, 2 of their starting linebackers from the start of the year. So but we haven't mentioned a single player from San Francisco. I mean, is there anything there, Austin, that might interest you on the San Francisco side to run back with maybe some of these Philly players and try and get some back and forth?
Yeah, I mean, Philly allows the 3rd most normalized fantasy points to wide receivers, so they are not exactly tough against the receiver. The problem is you've got to count on CJ Beathard throwing the ball to these receivers, which is a bit of a stretch. I think if you're going to go with a guy here, I would be cautious about going with Goodwin. He's got some health issues this week. It's, keep an eye on the injury reports there. I'd probably go with Garcon, but I don't feel good about it. I think this is a total fade. The matchup is so tasty, but I think it's a fade.
John, you gave a cackle.
I mean, I agree with him. Beathard is the big question there. I feel like this looks like a blowout to me, but you've at least got to consider a guy like Garcon. He's got a great matchup I'll talk about in just a few minutes. He's got a great matchup, and even if it's all 4th quarter points, I'll take it. They all count the same, whether they come early or they come late.
Yeah, I mean, this is, if there's ever a letdown spot for Philly, this would be it. I mean, they won on Monday night, short week. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying it's not an impossibility. Plus, it's the NFL. You don't know. Every single week, something crazy happens. All right, let's get to these wide receiver cornerback matchups. John, let's take us through the ones we want to target first.
Yeah, we got a lot this week. I maybe not go through as many as I traditionally do, but both of these Philadelphia Eagles receivers have excellent matchups this week. Nelson Aguilar, we talked about him already, goes up against Quan Williams out of the slot. Quan Williams, 108 out of 109 over there at Pro Football Focus. He's allowing one reception every 5.7 coverage snaps, which is one of the worst in the league. And Aguilar has 20 targets over the past 3 weeks, is second only to Zach Ertz. And this is something we didn't talk about, and I'm almost ashamed I didn't make this my fool's gold prediction this week, but Zach Ertz is going up against San Francisco's linebacking / safety core there. They've been really good against the tight end position this season. They're second best against tight ends. So maybe that means there's some overflow coverage to these wide receivers, those being Aguilar and Alshon Jeffrey, who has the best matchup he's had all season, going up against Dante Johnson. Dante Johnson, quarterback rating when thrown into his coverage is about 110. And, as I said, Alshon's gone up against Casey Hayward. He's gone against Josh Norman, Patrick Peterson, Janoris Jenkins, and he's even matched up a little bit against Marcus Peters there in Kansas City. This is the best matchup he's had all season, and I suspect he gets into the end zone. On the other side of the ball, Pierre Garçon, we just talked about him. He goes up against Jalen Mills. Jalen Mills allowed more receptions than any other cornerback in coverage this season, 41 receptions through the first 7 weeks. Targeted every 5 coverage snaps. The game script here is perfect, as we talked about a few moments ago. The biggest question here is whether or not we can trust C.J. Beathard to get him the ball in open space. Outside of that, I think you could love both Carolina wide receivers this week. Kelvin Benjamin looks like he's in a great spot. Devin Funchess is also in a good spot. They're going up against Tampa Bay, using Austin's normalized strength of schedule tool. Tampa Bay allows 51% above the league average to the wide receiver position in terms of fantasy points per game. These defensive backs, all 3 of them for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, rank in the bottom half of Pro Football Focus coverage. And the interesting thing, they get inside the red zone, they're all outsized by Funchess and Benjamin by at least 6 inches, and in some cases up to 8 inches. I think that's a huge differentiator when we start talking about red zone opportunities. If you're playing that Thursday to Monday slate there on DraftKings or FanDuel, Kyle Rudolph, great spot against the Cleveland secondary that allows so many points to the tight end position. We didn't even talk about how banged up this Cleveland defense is. They're going to be without Myles Garrett this week. He didn't even take the trip. Jason McCourty, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, is not going to play either. I think that benefits all of those Minnesota Vikings receivers. And I think I'll stop there. I've got a lot more. I think there's some great options this week. In terms of avoid, Brandon Cooks going to be shadowed by Casey Hayward. Casey Hayward shut down, I believe it was Demaryius Thomas last week. He looks like he's back onto his Juju. And speaking of Juju's going to be covered by Quandre Diggs, as we talked about earlier in the show. And then the last guy, I won't say that that this is a reason to completely fade him, but Antonio Brown will see shadow coverage on Sunday Night Football by Darius Slay. And Darius Slay, as we know, is one of the better cornerbacks in the league. And maybe that's a reason not to pay that high salary on Sunday night.
Well, take a deep breath and know that, you said, I wish I would have used him for Fool's Gold without even looking at who I had on our sheet for Fool's Gold, because that's our next segment. And lo and behold, I had Zach Ertz. So don't worry
about it.
Oh, there's nothing to talk about. You just explained everything. Broke the whole thing down. The one thing I'll add, though, is the context of it's just a really poor roster build to spend that price on him this week, because he's really gotten juiced up, rightfully so. But I cannot find the justification for doing that. I think if he scores 2 touchdowns, you're laughing, all the way to the bank, but that's still a really tough thing to kind of predict to happen. So I think he needs to score 2 touchdowns to make it worthwhile. I don't want to make that bet that it's going to happen. So I'm off of him. My bounce back this week, I love Keenan Allen here against in this matchup versus the New England Patriots. I mean, he's had 3 consecutive games under 10 fantasy points. The game script's going to set up perfect for him. There's going to be a lot of garbage time here. And I actually think Rivers to Keenan Allen, throwing some Hunter Henry is super intriguing. Outside of Matt Ryan, which I still can't explain, everybody has gotten off against this Patriots defense. Maybe they're getting better. Maybe they're getting coached up a little bit. Maybe they were unprepared to start the year. I don't know. But I'm not necessarily, buying a revival here. I think this is a sneaky spot here for a San Diego offense, which has moved the ball well. And, last week was a huge game for the Patriots. Monday night or Sunday night football, rematch of the Super Bowl. Huge letdown spot here. So I think Keenan Allen in San Diego is my bounce back. Okay, Austin.
My fool's gold is Jameis Winston. He had a big game last week, but they're facing Carolina this week, which is only allowing an average of 200 passing yards a game and only 1.4 passing touchdowns per game. So I don't see Winston having a big game here. It's a pretty low implied team total, 24 points, only 2-point favorites. I don't like many of the Buccaneers this week. For bounce back, I'm going to go back to that same Patriots game and say Melvin Gordon has a big bounce back this week. He had a terrible game last week against Denver. And this week, New England is going to be without already ruled out. Their linebacker, Donta Hightower, has been ruled out for week 8 with a shoulder injury.
Big.
And so I think that's a big deal for their run stopping ability. And they were already struggling with stopping the run. So especially like Gordon on FanDuel, where he's priced a little bit better this week.
Yeah, and he's going to be really low owned because I think most people, even on DraftKings, will look at that number and be like, I'll just go up and get one of the studs for a little bit more. Get a LaShawn McCoy. But, this, I'm with you. This New England defense is not good. And Gordon really struggles against, I think, good defenses. Bad defenses like this, I think he can do well. I'm with you. Okay, John, what you got?
I like both of your calls, by the way. I think they're both spot on. My fool's gold prediction this week is Joe Mixon against Indianapolis. I think he looked great last week in the first half. We talked about this a little bit, but then he went on and he's a rookie. He's got to earn his stripes, and he's out there bad mouthing Coach Lewis, is saying he should have been he should have been getting Le'Veon Bell work because of the type of production he had in the first half, and that didn't sit well with Marvin Lewis. I would not be surprised to see Lewis give him another dose of what he had last week, despite the great matchup here. I think that a lot of people are going to be chasing the value that we've been talking about chasing in this show, and they could be regretting it come Sunday night if Mixon gets maybe 12 to 15 touches at most. In terms of bounce back week, I love Cam Newton this week. Cam Newton going against Tampa Bay. They've allowed half of the opposing quarterbacks to throw for 300 yards. They've allowed one quarterback to throw for less than 268 yards. And let's talk about this list. Tyrod Taylor, Carson Palmer, we'll give you Brady. Okay, so Brady, Eli Manning, Case Keenum, and Mike Glennon. If you don't think that Cam Newton can do that against this same secondary, I don't know what to say. And let's not forget that they've got Jonathan Stewart running out of the backfield. I love Cam Newton this week. I think it's a perfect spot for him to bounce back.
All right, let's get to our final segment. Who you got? And I'm going to make this GPP because I think in cash games it's a little bit easier. But GPP, who do you got on DraftKings? Dak or Wentz? Only $100 apart. What you got, Austin?
I would go with Prescott and GPPs. I think mostly because of the ownership. I think more people are going to be owning Wentz against San Francisco.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, I've got Wentz in my notes here, but if you're going to make a GPP because of ownership, I think game strategy dictates you have to go with Dak.
I don't think Wentz is going to be as highly owned on DraftKings as you guys make him out to be, but I still don't think that makes him the right answer here. I just think he's got limited upside in this game versus Dak, who could get in that back and forth shootout. Game flow could really be in his favor there. I'm going with Dak as well. All right, cheap DraftKings quarterback. Cousins, Rivers, or Winston? I'm taking Rivers, but I like Cousins. What do you guys got?
I got Cousins for cash and Rivers for GPP.
I've got Cousins. I think Dallas, as we already talked about, pretty bad against the pass, 31st overall, and close game, high total. And their best running back is also a pass catcher. So I think it's Cousins here.
Well, you know what? So is Philip Rivers. No, I guess not. I can't say that. He's pretty good. But Melvin Gordon will catch a lot of balls. But that is it. We got to get out of here, boys and girls. We've got the DFS Pick 6 coming up next with the guys from Roto World, Evan Silva. You've got Rich Rebar, and, of course, our own Eric Crane. So stay tuned for those guys. Make sure you find us on the RotoGrinders podcast feed. And until next week, for John and Austin, I'm Dan. Good luck this week 8. We'll see you.